Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Triple Threat Comics YouTube channel. I'm your host, Ian Miller. Tonight, I am joined by Benjamin Hunting from all the way from Canada. Benjamin, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. And I've been hearing about this project for quite a while now, since it's been showing up on my feed a lot. But I was particularly interested because I like the title Dead Air.
Yeah, that it's funny because it feels like a really obvious title now, given the connection to radio. But it was a struggle to come up with that title. I believe it was one of my co-creators, Angela Hodge, who came up with that idea, and it mixed in with the fact that the book is also about a world where one day out of the year you can talk to the dead. So like these two, the crossover between dead air, which as you a broadcaster know, it's when there's just nothing going out over the airwaves. It's just quiet, and that's the worst. When I was first doing radio, I was told that was the worst thing there was. Like you should never have that situation ever. Um, so it's a tie between those two things, and ended up working out pretty well.
Okay, so you actually have background in radio. That's cool.
Yeah, the book itself, it's set in two time periods. There's a group of friends who are university DJs in the 90s, and then their
Uh,
more adult selves in 2011. And I myself was a university DJ around that period. I was a bit younger than the characters in the book. I started 1996. I was 16 years old, and hello.
Hi,
I
Vic.
was 16 years old, and I somehow convinced a university radio station to give me, a high school student, a time slot at like 8 p.m. on Friday nights for 2 hours. And it was myself and a friend of mine, Corey. And we had a blast, and I learned a lot about broadcasting, and I ended up doing that for 4 or 5 years. And I'd wanted to write, or at least set a story in that period, because I'm a big music guy. And I love a lot of music from that era. I also think it's an interesting era musically, just in terms of diversity of genres.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do a story set in that time period, but I didn't know what I wanted to write about. I didn't want to just be a slice of life kind of thing. So I was able to combine the sci-fi element of this technology that lets people talk to the dead using like a text interface one day out of the year, that gets invented some years after the events of those students, being students in university. And then I decided to use that to allow them to explore a tragedy that had happened to their friend group while they were young. And in doing that, they discover that something they thought had happened didn't happen at all the way that they had imagined. And the story is divided between, we see them in their present day as they get back together after spending many, many years apart, to figure out if there's a path forward for them to maybe change things for the better for themselves and the people who were involved in this tragedy. And we also see them when they were young, just before and while this is happening, and it bounces back between those two things.
I think it's cool. I always like it when we have stories that bounces back and forth between the past and the present because you can see just how much the characters have changed,
Yeah.
dramatic, sometimes dramatically, sometimes in small ways. Because that's another thing that's relatable because we all at some point, had changed from what we were when we were younger.
That was, for me, the most compelling part of the storytelling for this book, is the idea of how friendships change over time. And
Yeah.
when you're young, when you're in university, for example, or high school or whatever, you can feel like the relationships that you have in that moment are going to last forever. There's that energy, that optimism, and then sometimes that happens. But a
Yeah.
lot of the time, life intervenes. It pulls people apart, distance, family obligations, responsibilities, jobs. It can really change how you relate to other people, even if you were, when you're young, things are very immediate and you feel things very intensely, and that can forge these kinds of bonds that are maybe more difficult to have when you're older, or at least pick up when you're older. And I wanted to explore what it's like when you have this very intense group of friends, and 15 years later they're not necessarily in each other's lives in the same way, and whether that's because of what happened when they were young, or whether just because of life happening to them. Those are all interesting things to write about, I think.
It's true. Again, very relatable because I can relate some of those elements into my own life because I have a very close net with a couple of my friends from high school. You know, our class was very much very close during the high school years, but as you just pointed out, life happened, and a number of us, drifted apart,
Yeah,
because of life. But so yeah, that's what makes, I think, this even more relatable, because if I can talk about that, I'm pretty sure everyone can talk about that and be related to that, because yeah,
I
that's
hope
what
so.
happens.
I mean, I hope so. There's. I also wanted to kind of avoid nostalgia. Like that's not really why
Yeah,
I work a lot in that time period. I just find that the 90s are an interesting time to write about because we're not bombarded by the ubiquity of technology at that time. You know, like you don't have the internet in your pocket at all times.
yeah,
You don't necessarily even have a cell phone. You know, maybe you do, but it's kind of an outlier if you do. And so as a writer, I don't have to worry about that when I'm putting together a story. It's so easy to use like communications as a shortcut to killing dramatic tension. And I use this example a lot, but I mean, one of the greatest dramas of the 90s was Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And if you think about how many episodes would have been over in 10 minutes if someone had had a cell phone and could call Buffy and be like, hey, we're about to get eaten by a vampire. And she'd just be like, okay, where are you? You know, but so many shows, so many episodes were predicated on the fact that no one knows where Buffy is or they can't get in touch with her in time. And that changes the stakes of storytelling. So
yeah.
instead of having cell phones and ubiquitous internet, I have reaching out across the Great Divide to talk to the dead, which I guess is its own kind of unique technology, but one that lets you. I mean, for me, not only was that interesting story wise, but also let me create a world where that's different from the one that we live in, but there's a bit of a divergence, and you can see how that kind of technology, which we call detox, because everything has to be branded, right?
Yeah.
How that affects society, you know, religious groups, government, the court of law. Like we had to think about, oh well, if you can talk to the dead, does that mean murder cases you can litigate using this technology, that kind of thing? Like
Ooh.
we tried to build out the rules that surrounded it, and at the same time, also realize that no matter how cool the technology might seem, every brand new shiny toy that we get, humanity gets tired of it and moves on to the next thing. So that was also going to be an aspect of the storytelling. It's like what happens when the most amazing thing to ever happen to humanity becomes old hat, and how does the company that created it survive? How does society change when this technology just becomes a background thing? Those are concepts that I had a lot of fun with.
I think that, yeah, because again, I think that's exciting, and it's a very fresh approach, which is something I'm always looking in these projects, because it is a so interesting new approach, because I never thought of it like that.
I think about, like what we're doing now would have blown my mind as a teenager, like video conferencing. It just seems like Star Trek, I could
Yeah,
not have pictured it. But now we carry it around in our pockets with us. It's with us all the time. And that's, as a result, it doesn't seem special anymore. It just seems like something we can do.
yeah.
I mean, I'm sure if we had hoverboards, everyone would be
Oh,
bored of hoverboards, like,
I
or
wouldn't. I wouldn't.
I think I'd have like a broken pelvis, but I have no illusions of my hoverboard ability. But yeah, everything loses its luster technologically, um, and that's always the social aspects of technology's impact have always interested me. So I wanted to make sure to include that in this story.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also fair to say that sometimes when something is old, it becomes new again.
Sure, or there's always people who are late adopters, who don't either are uninterested when it first comes out or just unaware. Although I don't know how
Yeah.
you'd be unaware of a technology that lets you talk to dead people. I feel like that would
Uh,
get a pretty big PR push. But like personally, I wasn't on social media for a really long time, uh,
mhm.
and I know people who still aren't. So it still happens.
Yeah.
Even with comic books, I came to comics really late in life, or at least I feel like it's late. I didn't really start reading seriously, quote unquote, until my early 30s. When I was a kid, I read a lot of like weekend newspaper stuff like
Yeah.
Sunday Funnies and stuff like that. And I liked Archie and Veronica and Peanuts, Doonesbury, Berkeley Breathe stuff like Outland and Bloom County. But I didn't make the leap from that to superhero books or, I guess, traditional comics. And it wasn't until I was in my early 30s that I discovered this. There was a comic book store that had opened in a neighborhood I had just moved to,
Yeah.
and I wandered in and I ended up befriending the staff and getting all these great recommendations for indie comics, which I didn't know existed. I didn't know there were stories like that being told. And I remember for me, it was Alison Bechtel was like probably the first writer that really showed me what could be done with comics as a medium, and then just kind of took off from there. So it's never too late, like to
Yeah.
either embrace, I guess, social media, although I wouldn't recommend that now, or get involved in comics.
Yeah, yeah. In today's climate, it's kind of a double edged sword.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so this is 1 through 3 of Dead Air. How long is this going? How long is this a mini series or
It's a
it's
mini
gonna be a longer
series.
series?
We're probably going to wrap it up with a double sized fourth issue. That's what it's
Ooh,
looking like. Because I've thought about going to five, but sometimes, unfortunately, your narrative doesn't have an easy stopping point after 22 pages, and it
yeah,
doesn't make sense to split it up. So that's it's not set in stone, but that's what we're thinking. Already working on the next issue. The art is, I think we have a couple of pages left to do for issue number three, so that's ready to go. Shipping is from Canada to the US is more time consuming now, a lot of paperwork to do. So we've given ourselves as much time as possible. We're trying to deliver by August this summer, hopefully before that, but you never know. So kind of building in a little bit of a buffer period there for us. But
yeah,
really excited. It's been a couple of years since the second issue, and I'm really excited to have people back on the book with us and to have a whole bunch of new people showing up to check out the story. And we offer in the Kickstarter, we have all three issues. We have some fun stuff too, like there's a 3D printed cassette tape. One of my co-creators, Angela Hodge, um, she is a product designer, and she's created this full size cassette tape, 3D printed, comes in a case with a J card, and inside of that there's a download code, and you can download 10 episodes of Dead Air Radio, which I was doing for about a year and a half on an FM station here in Quebec, and we're picking 10. It's all 90s music, and we're picking 10 of the best episodes out of the 70 or 80 that we have to send to people. And we also have a tier where you can get a random 90s CD pulled from the record library of CJNK, which is the radio station that we have inside the book. And
wow,
it could be anything. It could be Mariah Carey. It could be Pearl Jam. It could be Kenny G. There's no way to know until you open that box and see what you're looking at. So it's kind of fun to have a CD like that. I also want to shout out
absolutely.
Joe Ing is the artist on this book. His work is incredible. He makes my writing look amazing, and he's been a fantastic collaborator just in creating the world of Dead Air. Like he puts an incredible amount of detail into background elements, what people are wearing, hair. Just the design for each character is fantastic, and the thought he put into one time period versus the other. If you look at how the pages are designed and the colors and whatnot, in the 90s, the book is much brighter. The gutters are white. Our colorist Mayo Paycheck, she's using a brighter palette just generally because kind of when you look back at your youth, you might remember things a little bit brighter than they actually
Yeah,
were.
yeah,
And then when we get to 2011, which is when the characters are in their 30s and life's beating them down a little bit, palette becomes more muted. There's more grays. We have black gutters. It's it's fun to do stuff like that storytelling wise, but also when you're jumping back and forth between time periods, it's really helpful for people to have a visual shorthand where they can look at a page and know right away where they are chronologically without necessarily having to read any dialogue, or going any further than just a quick look. So we tried to design the book so that every element of it was supporting the story.
yeah. Again, it makes sense, and it is a great way to great form of storytelling. Just visualizing, okay, this is what the past looked like. It's definitely a lot brighter because, again, as you just said, this is how we remember things a bit more brighter. And now here's in the present where everything is muted. And I think that's actually true in real life because I've looked at old photographs of stuff, I'll give you a perfect example. The 90s McDonald's, right? Completely different design,
Yeah,
bit more brighter.
yeah,
Now look at the current one, bit
yeah.
grayer.
It's interesting, you thinking about design that way because when we were looking at what the characters were wearing and whatnot and their various fashions because we were able to tap into the musical subcultures. You have like a goth DJ and a metalhead and techno DJ and a Britpop DJ. And so you can use a lot, you can draw from those musical subcultures and you realize how much more color was involved in the 90s in fashion for the
Yeah.
most part. And then, thinking about McDonald's, I remember just how much more hard plastic was involved, and a lot of that plastic in those stores was brightly colored, right? And now we live in this aesthetic where everyone wants to live in a mid-level hotel room with white walls and like gray furniture and gray carpets. And I feel like that aesthetic has bled into restaurant decor. It's like this,
Yes.
it's almost like Airbnbs have colonized restaurants in some ways. And all the elements that are unique are shared by restaurants.
This is so true. This is so true. It's like we just, we just like personality in these type of designs.
Yeah. It's designed to be as inoffensive as possible, I guess.
Yeah.
You end up in a world of beige, which is I don't think serves anyone very well. But
No,
what,
no, no, no.
what can you do? I used
Yeah.
to travel a lot for professionally, and I can tell you I don't ever want my home to look like a hotel room. Like it's not. I don't want to come home from a trip and feel like I'm still on the road. Like that seems like a
No,
very odd desire.
no, 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 absolutely not. Okay, why don't we show them the Kickstarter campaign? Well, let's show them the page.
Okay.
And folks, in case you haven't noticed, the actual link has been scrolling this whole time below.
Oh, it's much brighter than I remember it. that white background.
Yeah. Okay, so like I said, we got 15 days to go. You're halfway there. I think you're definitely gonna make it in 15 days.
Hey, fingers
Even
crossed.
past it.
Anyway, if anyone's listening and wants to help us get over the hump, that would be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a very kick-ass concept in comic, and I think everyone should actually, back it if like these type of stories.
It's kind of you to
Oh,
say.
this is
I appreciate the support.
this is a sick cover. I mean, come on.
So that's our metalhead DJ Ferry. He's as you can see a bit of a party guy. Joe stuck the Prince of Darkness on the in bobblehead form on the desk.
Oh, I like that.
Give it a little personality, and we tried to incorporate as many elements from the story and the setting as we could on this cover, little Easter eggs and stuff. Joe's really great at dumping that kind of detail in there.
Yeah. I'm sure Ozzy would have approved of this. He definitely would approve of this.
And you can also, if you want, read the first 4 pages. There's a PDF at that link, and that will
Oh,
take you
nice.
to issue 1, pages 1 through 4, which set up the story, get things rolling, just to show people interior pages in a format that's a little bit bigger than what you can put on a Kickstarter page.
Yeah, absolutely.
So these are the credits pages that we use for each book. We try to incorporate it into the story itself. Usually on page 4, we have a splash page with the
Yeah.
credits, and that's a close approximation of what the DJ booth looked like at my university. Uh, Whenever you're in a university radio station, at least in that period, you're talking about gear that's like hand me downs from hand me downs. So you're always a few generations behind, but you also have that weird combination of, well, we got a grant so we can buy something new. So there's a computer screen in there, right? And probably a mini disc player because that was a really big technology back then. We played all of our ads on mini disc because you could
Yeah.
re-record it easily and didn't wear out like tape did. But everything's crowded, and you're trying to pack as many things as you can into a small space.
Wow, that's just too cool.
They're
Ooh,
trying to evoke a bit of that old school radio kind of marquee look that you used to see on the older station. I mean, a long time ago, not 90s, but it's a fun touch to put in there. You get a splash of color in a dark scene,
yeah.
and you get to see all the crew in the background.
I see what you're talking about with the different fashion they're wearing.
Yeah, it's Joe often talks about how when he was learning how to design characters. So Joe's been in the industry a long time. He's done a lot of work for Transformers and Street Fighter and a lot of IPs like that. And he's done some Marvel board game stuff. And
Wow.
when he was introduced to the industry, he was taught that all characters should be, if you took all the color off the page and just saw them in silhouette, black and white, you should be able to tell who they are. And so that's like a guiding force for him when he's putting together the personality visually for each of the characters.
Yeah, it's our way to do things. Oh, that this I like, especially in the newspaper clippings. You see the tile. That's very inventive.
He really went to town on this one. And the fun thing about this is, as I mentioned, these are usually on page 4, so we have a sequence building up to this moment, and it's the ability, like I can smell this basement, like. And I think that a big part of that is his ability to make a space look lived in, like someone has maybe been living in there a little too long and hasn't gone outside in quite a long time. So his Joe's work is extremely atmospheric and evocative of the environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. I could almost smell the environment as well because he does a very good job with the details. Because again, this looks like something you would definitely see in a creepy basement.
Yeah. Well, remember what I said about how not everyone's life goes the way they planned it, right?
Yeah,
So when
this
we
is
catch up
definitely
with
it. Yeah.
yeah, we catch up with some of our characters, and there are some surprises that aren't always positive.
Ugh. Obviously, this is telling us about what you like, Diddy, or
Yeah, it's just talking about some of the inspirations behind it and other media that are somewhat adjacent to the idea. I know that I mentioned Gem and the Holograms, which is a really cool comic series that was available in the 20 teens, and there were numerous artists on it, but I really loved how I think it's tough to present music in a comic book, especially performance of music. I've come
yeah,
across a few titles that do it really well, but Gem was outstanding just in terms of capturing not just the energy of performance, but also the vibe of what it's like to be in a band when you're young. And
yeah,
when Joe and I were working on the initial character designs, and specifically the use of color in Gem and the Holograms, I brought a lot of those issues to him, and we went through them and just kind of looked at the way that they were constructing their characters. And obviously, Gem's more heightened reality than what
yeah.
we're working with, but it was a cool bit of a template as to what direction we could maybe go in with some of the younger characters.
I also see Scott Pilgrim's on here as well, which
Yeah.
which I also agree with because that also represented music a lot, especially in the panel designs.
Mm-hmm.
I obviously it's a bit some of it was a bit more video game based, but still, the band playing scenes were very much rock orientated, so it
Yeah.
was cool.
Yeah. For sure. For sure.
Okay, now this is cool.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite panels.
I can see why.
And there's even a little Easter egg. The drink she has there is Code 45, which is our first graphic novel that Joe, Angela, and I worked on together back in 2020.
Oh, I
So
like that.
if we try to hint at the idea of a shared universe, which is a fun thing to do.
Yeah, and it says a lot about her character in particular.
Yeah,
This panel.
you know words, right? You don't need them.
Yeah,
It's that's.
exactly.
I remember back in back in I guess it would be college. I was taking a lot of film classes, and one of my professors had us watch the introduction to Terminator 2. And I don't, I'm sure you've seen the movie, but
Yeah.
this scene where after he takes the clothes from the biker and steps out of the bar and puts on the sunglasses, he doesn't say anything. There's no word. Camera pans up. You see this full character. Someone tries to stop him. He takes the gun from him, takes the glasses, and drives off. And the teacher's point was, you fully established who this character is with absolutely zero dialogue, and all it is complete wardrobe and setting, and that works for them. And I've tried to keep that in mind sometimes when I'm thinking about a panel. It's like, I don't need to have words here. Like, there's so much more in the world that defines who a character is than just what comes out of their mouth, you know. So any opportunity, especially in a visual medium like comics, any opportunity to trim down on the words, I'm gonna take that.
Again, that is pretty much close to what my former instructor, Klaus Jansen, who many of you know, had is a yes, inker and pencilist um, for comics like Dark Knight Returns, the Daredevil series with Frank Miller, and so on. Yeah, he was all along the same lines of what your instructor had said, because he said if he could find a way to actually tell a story without the words, you know, then you're already a storyteller.
Yeah, you have to use every tool and every element that's available. And comics has so many cool elements that you can throw in. It shouldn't be, in my opinion, an illustrated storybook. I mean, if you want to write that, then that's fine. More power to you. But in my opinion, I think that you can surpass that in terms of storytelling with
Yeah,
comics.
obviously, here's your little bit of your bio here.
Yeah, I've been, I guess, making comics since 2018, and I've been a freelance writer full time since 2008, pretty much. I mostly write automotive and some technology stuff, but
Nice.
yeah, it's nice to have the two things, the two very different, very different worlds to write in.
It is because also you get out. Sometimes the worlds can collide.
Yeah, but you know, like I never really felt the desire to do a car based comic book. I think mostly because I'm doing them all day long. I'm doing it all day long, you know, and I don't want every aspect of my life to be car related. And it's hard to think of really good car related comic books.
Yeah, that's true.
Obviously, there's things like Initial D, which are, you know, very well done, and Fugu Z and things like that, or the Devil Z, sorry. But like in American comics, I haven't come across a lot of really good car based stuff. I mean, I guess you could consider something like Transformers to be maybe the best example of that form.
Yeah,
But it's not always easy to draw car action in a way that's compelling. I think it can be really challenging, like in terms of movement and sustaining tension and whatnot. Or maybe I just haven't tried hard enough. Who
wait,
knows?
it's up to it's up to you. It's up to you. You
Yeah.
know, yeah. Just at this point, you should just write what you want to write,
Yeah.
and sometimes if you write what you know, along with that, it does help a little.
Yeah.
But again, this is again, do your own thing. That's the first thing I have to say. Do your own thing. Wow. So clearly, lots happening here without actually giving us hint. It's giving us hints of what's happening, but it's not telling us the whole story. Again,
Yeah, I mean it's tough to do, right? When you're three issues in, it's like you need to make it compelling, but also leave enough breadcrumbs so people want to read to find out how they can connect all of these images that they're seeing.
yeah, yeah. Your artist is a very talented draftsman.
Fantastic, fantastic. I'm extremely fortunate to work with Joe,
Yeah,
and in fact, so Joe's been in the industry since for more than 20 years, and when I wanted to start making comics, I'd known Joe for almost that length of time, and I've known his partner for longer than that. And I went to them and I said, "Look, I have this idea for a comic book. I want to write it. Do you know an artist who might be interested in working with me?" And it turned out that Joe was interested in working with me, which was unexpected. And on the first book that we did, Code 45, he essentially put me through comic books college. Like I got to learn from him all sorts of things: panel design,
Yeah.
character design, page turns, which is something I never really thought about even as a reader. How much room to leave in a panel for dialogue, how many panels you can put on a page before things get confusing. You know, all the technical elements that like I would have had no way. I would have been blundering through it. I would have been making mistakes and learning from those mistakes. And instead of that, I got to have him be my teacher and walk me through it as we wrote our book. And it's interesting, I think, that if you look at Code 45, which is actually available digitally on this campaign, um,
Wow.
you can see the book get better over 5 issues. Like the fifth issue is technically better to look at and easier to read than the first issue. And that has nothing to do with Joe's talent. It has to do with me being able to write in a way that accessed Joe's talent because I just wasn't there when I first started. I was doing my best, and then I got to learn the more effective ways to tell a story on the page. And now we're at the point where he's amazingly adept at taking something out of my brain and visualizing it in a way that is a little bit scary. Like I'm able to talk with him and describe something, and he will be able to create it exactly or better how I had pictured it. And we still do thumbnails on some of the pages and layouts and stuff.
Yeah.
And I've developed the ability to look at his layout and know exactly what the page will look like when it's done, which is kind of crazy because the layouts are literally just like, sketches. And I can see this oval and this other oval and be like, all right, I know exactly what that's going to look like. So develop this ability to communicate visually that I think is amazing. And it really works now that we're on a second book together. We've been almost 10 years of working together on comics. You start to do you can hit another level, I think, of communication. So I'm very
You
fortunate
know,
in that respect.
yeah, you know what it is? That's when two talents are actually clicking. They're on the same wavelength.
Yeah,
So I'm very pleased that that's happened to you because, I've had happen to me as well as a creator with other people I've worked with. Sometimes it's gratifying to see, when you're actually on the same page on a lot of things
yeah, for sure.
because as you said, it's very eerie. When he's plucking your ideas out and actually drawing them on the page, it's exactly how you imagined it.
Yeah, yeah. And I also, part of that whole process was learning to trust Joe as an artist. And when I first started writing comic books, I had a tendency to over describe what was happening in a panel. And at one point, Joe had to say to me, "Look, like the visual aspect of this book, you can lean on me for that. That's what I'm good at. That's why I'm here. So you don't have to stage manage every single aspect of a panel." And that's incredibly freeing as a writer to be able
Yeah.
to describe action without directing action. Or you can, I mean, I still include things like where I think the perspective could work from where we're seeing a certain panel, but ultimately it's up to the artist to determine whether that serves the story. And I'm not always going to be right about what looks best. And it's truly great if you have someone who can call you out on it and be like, hey, I think that if we move the camera here, it can be more effective. Or I can fit everything in if we just move this panel away and shrink this panel, kind of thing. And like I
Yeah.
don't have the developed visual brain to do that. I'm able to access. Comics is so collaborative. Instead of just having your own brain, you get all these other brains that like are focused on this one story, and that's amazing. So you got
It
to take
is.
advantage of that. You got,
What's the thing? The goal is to, make the best product that you can and
yeah,
just make sure that your egos are at the door
for
because the
sure.
goal is to win,
Yeah,
and to win is to make a great product. And yeah,
I mean,
when that
I
when that
so
happens, yeah.
well,
No, no, no.
I work, with editors all day long, in my as a professional writer. So I don't, I fortunately don't have that ego thing in the sense that I know the reason I'm getting criticism is to improve
Yeah,
whatever it is that we're working on. and that's the only way you're improving as a writer is if someone challenges you. Because if no one challenges you and you're on cruise control, you're not going to reach the levels you can. And on this book, we have great editor Kevin Birchter, who I've been working with on a few issues now, and he's fantastic at taking parts of a script and being like, okay, like we don't need this, we don't need this, maybe reconsider this. And he's very straightforward and usually accurate, because he'll look at something and there could be a sequence that I love, but it doesn't move the story forward. We're spinning our wheels, we're treading water, and it takes you right out of the energy of the storytelling. And because I love it, I don't see that. Like I just see a
Yeah,
fun scene that I wrote. I don't see the scene as part of the 6 or 7 other scenes that are surrounding it. And that's where an editor can come in and really, really just provide a perspective that you don't have because you're too close to the project.
yeah,
Like I said, multiple brains. Like that's the key.
absolutely. And obviously, this is the crew here.
Yeah. So a lot of this team, like Joe, Angela, Maya, and I have been working on this project for um, several years now. And on this issue, we have Lyndon Radchenka coming in on letters for the first time. I'd worked with him on a previous project and it was really great. He's based out in Winnipeg.
Wow.
And Kevin's been on this project, I think, since issue 2. I assure you that it's not the scripts I send him are not the what are making him make that face. Um, but it's fun to work with people that you enjoy working with. I try to make that a rule, and it's a great crew, and they're very patient, and that's also important in comics, I think.
Yeah, it is. And because it's always best to surround yourself by people that are very talented and easy to get along with, because
Yeah,
you know it makes it all the better.
it's like you always hear about people when they're in a band. It's like you better like the people you're in a band with because you're going to be in a van with them for like 8 to 9 hours a day.
Oh God.
And comics, it's the same kind of idea. You better like the people you're working with because this could be 2 or 3 years of your life. you
Yeah,
know
and obviously this is what they've worked on.
yeah, we probably need to upgrade this comic at some point, or this graphic at some point. But
Yeah, I would say so, because I'm pretty sure there's a couple of other ones that they put in there that they've done work with.
yeah, and these are just some of the rewards. We got the comic, obviously, and then we
Yeah.
have the issues. It's the cover of issue 2.
Ooh, nice.
Very fun cover. It's cool too. It wraps around. I have it here. It wraps around the back and connects to a Walkman. So we have the cable from the headphones onto the
Oh,
to the Walkman.
yeah. I like how it's out. The Walkman's outlined like that because it's all in white. It's kind of like the dead zone.
Yeah,
If you
it's
think,
like where is this person existing? Like what are we looking at
yeah,
here? Oh, that's the first issue.
wow. I was about to ask, is there an art print of this?
You can get a print of the cover. Yeah, we do smaller prints because they're easier to ship. Trying to keep everything inside a mailer. That's one of the lessons you learn when you're trying to fulfill Kickstarter projects. You don't want weirdly sized stuff.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah. So I was saying the layouts. This is part of what Joe's process is when we're working on the initial scripts. So we're
Wow.
offering the chance to get a look at the layouts for each page and then tie that to the script themselves. Um, it's I think it's interesting if you're someone who either just wants to see behind the scenes or someone who wants to make a comic themselves and to see the steps that are involved, because it's not like you don't just start drawing a page. It's never really like that. It's a negotiation where you're trying to figure out the best way to present the story, and that can change over time. Like pages come and go, and panels come and go too, and where they are on the page. Just because we actually had because we had a gap between this issue and the last one. Um, there were when we came back to this script, there were some pages that we completely redesigned, and most of that was just time being away from the project and seeing it with fresh eyes, but also it was realizing things that we wanted to do in issue 4 and being able to support them in this issue by adding just a few elements here or there. was a real opportunity for us. And we have it's a little swag bag. Um, we have a show poster like you would see up around your university. Get some fun stickers, and we're doing these little student ID cards for some of the DJs. So if you're in from day one, you can like collect all of these over time, and I guess impersonate a DJ at a fictional university. But I
Very
like
nice.
rewards that are in world, like that are world
Yeah,
building. It's fun, I think.
I see. This is the 90s CD surprise you were telling us about.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah. Then
Very
you'll never
nice.
know. You'll never know what it is until you pop it in, or I guess open it up and see the cover.
Wow.
That's our mixtape. Well, I mean, that's our replica mixtape. I would love, love, love to be able to send people actual mixtapes, but first of all, I believe that's illegal. And
Yeah.
second, I have a lot of cassettes hanging around because I have an older vehicle that requires cassettes. But I have no nostalgia for that format. It is a terrible format, and if I had to record like a couple dozen tapes, it would take a very long time.
Yeah.
It's not the kind of technology that scales up very well, analog stuff. So we decided to go with the downloads and the radio shows instead as a better way. I mean, it ultimately people get more music that way, which is and more '90s fun in that way than they
Yeah.
would just on a single tape. I'm sure there are companies out there that will like mass duplicate tapes, but again, like it feels like I'm
Uh,
getting into a time machine and making bad decisions.
yeah. Yeah. It wouldn't, you wouldn't want to do that. No. No.
See some head sketches that Joe's done of the characters. Some of them are from earlier designs. Some of them are from later. It's all hand drawn, and
Wow.
we have I believe about 10 of those available, and that's a fun way to get a piece of art from a really talented artist. And we also have 2 pages of original art from the book. Those are from the
Oh my
first issue.
God.
I didn't want to spoil the ones that we're going to be giving in this tier. I want it to be more of a surprise, but just that gives you an idea of what those look like when he does them by hand, which is it's truly cool. Um,
It is.
it's also a unique way to experience the book because it's the only way you'll see it in black and white, and it's a different experience.
Absolutely.
And then we just have this is a way to see the tiers, the rewards
Yeah.
tiers, and we
Very
also
reasonably priced.
well we're trying. The Canadian dollar is weak, so it's appealing for American supporters. You can get your dollar can go pretty far. Um, we also we include a little shipping alpaca because we have a comics collective called Studio Alpaca
Mm.
that we work out of, and so every package comes with a little alpaca, some type of alpaca representation that will guard your package while it's being shipped in, while it's being shipped to your house. I mean,
I like it. Very nice. Obviously, this is the risk and challenges. Obviously, we don't need to go through that because, again, you already know what's already happening, folks, with producing the comics.
yeah,
So, yeah, let's
we
just
print
say that, yeah,
we print everything here in Canada. All our rewards are sourced in Canada, and the tariff situation in the U.S. kind of requires that now. So there's a lot of paperwork that we have to fill out to just ensure that once it gets to the border, they understand that it's Canadian product.
yeah,
Um, so that's in the past we maybe imported some stuff from other countries, but it's a little too challenging to do these days. So we're not doing things like pins and buttons and whatnot for now. We might come back to that in the future.
yeah. Okay, so like we said before, we got 15 days to go, and yeah, you're halfway there. With we need to get to $9,493. That's the official goal,
Yeah, I know that's a weird
and
looking number. It's 13,000 Canadian. So like Kickstarter does like a live exchange rate thing.
yeah,
So that's how it ends up working. So I know that sometimes when you look at the prices for the tiers, it can seem a bit strange because they also translate the tiers into, I believe, on one like we're showing them as Canadian dollars, and then in the panel it'll show that in U.S. dollars. So it can be a little bit confusing, but
yeah. Well, personally, I think this is a fun project, and I don't think any one of you who are fans of the genre will want to miss out on this. So collect chapters 1 through 3 of Dead Air today. So just go to the link below and back it. Let's see if we can get this funded fully before the 15 days end.
I would love that. It would take a lot of stress off my shoulders. And thanks
It would.
thanks thanks Ian for giving me the chance to come on and just talk about the book and talk about comics in general.
Absolutely. And you're always welcome to come back anytime you like to talk about it.
Thank you.
Because I definitely need more people to talk about comics, especially indie comics, where we're going and what we could still become.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So, folks, back Dead Air today. And Benjamin, I'm going to do my best to promote this as crazy during these 15 days.
Thank you so much. That really
Yeah,
helps a lot. Word of mouth is the single best thing for any kind of Kickstarter.
it absolutely is. And, it's always great being new creators to me because I instantly become friends with them. So, Ben, you are now a friend of mine.
I feel the same way.
Thank you. Well, folks, I think that's going to be it for us tonight. Yeah, not too much to talk about on my end because, again, I'm in the middle of not inking, penciling my last issue of Codename Hunter for this first story arc. I'm going to start writing the second story arc in a month, after I start my Kickstarter,
Mm.
which is going to be in July. So there's that. And I will be glad to tell you that I'm actually going to be recording for the Patreon page Starman and the Real Adventures of Johnny Quest next week. So look out for that. And like I said, this is going to be it for us tonight. And you guys have a good evening.
Bye, everybody.
I'm Emil, and this has been Triple Threat Comics YouTube channel. Bye, folks.